Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Crocheters-Creed, and today we are going to be making the lady from Little Nightmares. Yes, another Little Nightmares tutorial. And the lady is the last, I believe, character or enemy that you come into contact with at the end of the game, so spoiler alert if some of you haven't seen it. So the materials that you will need for the lady are brown yarn. I have a lot of brown yarn. Dark brown yarn because her kimono is mainly black, dark brown. So you'll need some dark brown. You will need, this is some speckled, sort of, I don't know, tannish yarn. It's speckled, but it still works. Some tan yarn. I'm not really sure which one this is, or what it's called, but some tan yarn for her, I want to pronounce it right, obi, which is I believe the sash around the kimono, and the obijime, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, forgive me if I'm not, for the tie that ties around the sash. So you will need that. You will also need a bit of black yarn. You only need black for her eyes and her hair, and you will also need white for her face. As you know, I love my glue gun, so you'll need your glue gun. If you want to use it, you can also use a stitch needle, and last but not least, well, I should have done this first, but you will need a 4.25 millimeter hook and a 3.75, I don't know if you can see that, 3.75 millimeter hook, yarn, scissors, and stuffing, and my bag's too big to sit up here, but you also need stuffing. So those are the materials that you will need for this project, so let's get started. Alright, now I want to make sure that my camera is focusing. I hate when it looks fuzzy. I think that's as good as it's going to get for now. So you're going to take your dark brown yarn and your 4.25 millimeter hook. You're going to make a slip knot. Make sure you leave a tail so that you can sew in the ends. And you are going to chain 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And you are going to join your ends. You're going to join your ends together. So slip stitch like that. Slip stitch into and join your ends. And you are going, remember not to take the end because I do that sometimes. Chain 2, 1, 2, and you are going to double crochet in every stitch around. And when you are done, it's going to look like this. And you are going to slip stitch into the top stitch here. So slip stitch into the top stitch, yarn over, pull through, and that is the starting row. You're going to chain 2, and for row 1 you are simply going to double crochet in every stitch around. So go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over again, pull through 2, yarn over again, pull through 2. Sorry if I didn't explain that in the beginning. But one more time, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And you will do 1 double crochet in every stitch around for row 1. After you are done, this is what it's going to look like. and you're going to slip stitch into the top stitch, and we're making the kimono from the bottom up. So for row 2, you are going to chain 2 again. Let me finally get my pattern. And for row 2, you are going to do a decrease in the first stitch. So if you know, decreases take up, one decrease takes up 2 stitches. So you're going to yarn over, since this is still a double crochet, you're still doing double crochets. You're going to yarn over, pull through, go into that first stitch and pull up a loop, go into the next stitch, yarn over. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all of the loops. And after your only decrease, you are going to double crochet around the remainder of the row. Alright, after you are done, you are going to slip stitch into the top stitch. This is what it's going to start to look like. Now for row 3, you're going to chain 2, and you are going to do 2 decreases. So in the first stitch, here, in the first stitch, you're going to go into the stitch. Come on. Go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. I'm going to go into the next stitch, this stitch here, that stitch there, go in, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the next stitch here, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 stitches on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. Oops, no, don't chain, come on, come on, okay, and after that, we're just going to double crochet down the remainder of the row for row 3. After you are done, you are going to slip stitch into the top stitch, and that is row 3. Now for rows 4 through 12, you are going to, now let's see, 4 through 13, excuse me. For rows 4 through 13, you are going to double crochet in every stitch around. So you're going to put 1 double crochet in every stitch around for rows 4 through 13. When you are done, this is what it's going to look like. Now I only did rows 4 through 11, 4 through 10 with double crocheting because it was getting a bit too big. So I only did 6 rows of 1 double crochet, and in the last row after my 6 rows I put a decrease in every stitch around. So for the last row you are going to put a decrease in every stitch around, and then slip stitch into that last stitch. And this doll or amigurumi, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't have any stuffing in it at all. It just kind of sits there. It's a bit too tall for my camera, but just kind of sits there. Oh, it's really flat, but yeah, it has no stuffing in the body portion. I actually only use the stuffing for one part of this, but that is the kimono. Now you're going to cut your yarn off. They have a long tail so that you can sew in your ends. Chain 1 and pull through. You're going to leave that. Now you are going to make the obi and obijime, which is the sash that is around the kimono. So get your tan yarn and your 3.75 millimeter hook. Now for the obi and the obijime, really hope I'm pronouncing that right, you're going to take your tan yarn and you are going to make a slip knot. Now this all depends, the length of this all depends on how you made your kimono. Now I'm going to chain 25 and I'm going to see if that fits around my the middle portion of my kimono. And if it does or it doesn't, chain less or chain more, but I'm chaining 25 and I'm using my 3.75 millimeter hook. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, my desk is squeaking, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Let me see if that fits around my kimono. Just a bit. If it doesn't fit, 25, let's try 26, 27, 2 more stitches, and see if that fits. That is perfect, because you're going to have to slide it. You're going to have to slide it up or down on top of your part of your kimono. So I chained 27, chain more or less for yours if chaining 25 doesn't work well for you. Now what you are going to do is join your end. Turn over, pull through, make sure it's not, there we go. And pull through. Oh, there we go. And you are going to single crochet in every stitch around. If you are done, this is how it's going to look. And for rows 1 through 8, you are just going to chain 1 and single crochet in every stitch around. And you can add a stitch marker just to make sure that your ends line up. But for rows 1 through 8, you're going to single crochet in every stitch. If you are satisfied with the length of it after you are done with the rows, then you are going to yarn off. If you're not, continue to make rows to your liking, and I will see you back when you are done. After you are done, this is what it's going to look like, and you can slide it over the part of your kimono, and that's all it is. You just slide it on, and that is your obi, I believe. The obijime is the cord that ties around it. Now for the obijime, really hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm going to cut my yarn from the gray yarn. Move that out. And you are going to cut 3 long strands. Actually, this works. 3 long strands from your tan yarn. So cut 1 strand, line that strand up to the next, make sure that it's even. Whoop, see if that's even. And cut that. That's 2. Line those 2 up to 1 and get the rest of your yarn, and that, let's see if they're even. Hold on. Make sure they're even. They don't have to be exactly even, but it's good if they are. And cut those excess off. Now you're going to take your kimono with your 3 strands, and you're going to pull, make sure your strands aren't pushed in, make sure the back is facing the back part of it. And you are going to take your, well, you know what, let's not put the strands on yet, because I still have to sew in the ends of the OB, is what you call it. So leave your 3 strands to the side, and we will be making the 2 arms next. Alrighty, now for the arm portion, you will need your brown yarn again, and you will need your 3.75 millimeter hook. And what you are going to do is make a slip knot. Make sure you leave a long tail, a decent tail. You're going to get your 3.75 millimeter hook, and you are going to chain 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come on. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Now you're going to join your ends again. Join your ends. And tighten that. And you're going to chain 2. And you are going to put a double crochet in every stitch around for the starting row. So the starting row, you put 1 double crochet in every stitch around. Alright, now after you are done, you are going to slip stitch into the top stitch. And that is your starting row. Now for row 1, you are just going to double crochet in every stitch. Put 1 double crochet in every stitch around. For row 3, you're going to chain 2, and you are going to do a decrease in the first stitch. So go in, yarn over, pull through 1, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through all of the loops. Then you are simply going to do a double crochet in every stitch around for the remainder of the row. Alright, now after that, you are going to slip stitch to the top stitch. You are going to chain 2. For row 4, you are going to put 2 decreases at the beginning of your pattern. And after that, you are going to do a double crochet in every stitch around after you put your 2 decreases. And remember, a decrease takes up 2 stitches. So after your 2 decreases, 1, 2, double crochet in every stitch around for the remainder of the row. Okay, make sure you can see, zooms in. Now after you do that, after you are finished with row 4, you are going to slip stitch, chain 2, and for rows 5 through 10, you are going to do a double crochet in every stitch around, or you will be doing 6 rows of double crochet, if that makes it easier. Rows 5 through 10, do 1 double crochet in every stitch around, and I'll meet you back when you are done. Alright, I have completed my rows, and on the last row, or the 11th row, I put a decrease in every stitch for row 11. So I put a decrease in every stitch. Remember, it's nothing, it's no stuffing. in this portion of it. So I did a decrease in every stitch for row 11. If you want your arms to be longer, then you can make it, do it to your liking. And this is what the arm is going to look like next to it. So, yarn off, cut your yarn off, pull through, and that is your arm. You're going to make two. I've already made my second one here. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew in my ends. Let's put that over there. I'm going to sew in my ends on this so that you can see my things. So they actually lined up pretty well. But I'm going to sew in my ends so that I can connect my 3 strands. Now, for this part, it's very loose on here. I tend to just keep mine, it's easy to come off if you pull it. So if you want to stitch it through or sew through to attach it onto your thing, then that's fine. But I like the way it looks like this. I'm going to sew in my ends, and then I'll meet you back so that we can attach your 3 strands to your OB, if that's the correct pronunciation. Okay. Now we're going to be making the neck portion of the lady. And so what you are going to do is make a magic circle, and you're still using your 3.75 millimeter hook. You're going to take that in. Make sure you can see it. Wrap around. And now what you're going to do is you're going to put 4 single crochet into the magic circle. So that's 1. Oh, this is 2. This is 3. And this is 4. And we're going to pull that through. And we are going to slip stitch into the last stitch, or the slip stitch into the stitch across from it. Come on. Slip stitch. Come on, friend. Come on. Let's try that again. Slip stitch. Now you're going to chain 2. And for row 1, for rows 1 and 2, you are going to put a double crochet in every stitch. Yeah, it made it harder if you were to do single crochet because it would be harder to see every stitch, but the double crochet helps it line up better. So no stitch markers for this part. So this is the first row. Rows 1 and 2, you are going to put 1 double crochet in every stitch around, and it shouldn't take that long. Now for row 3, you're going to chain 1, and you're going to put a single crochet in every stitch around. And this is what it's going to look like after you are done. So that is your neck. Alright, now after you are done with that, you are going to get your white yarn, make a slip knot, and this part is going to be for the lady's face. She's a geisha, so her face is white. Make sure you leave a long tail to sew in your ends, and you're still using your 3.75 millimeter hook, and you are going to chain 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now you're going to single crochet in every stitch across. I feel like it gets blurry. I'm not close enough to it. So single crochet and every stitch across. And this is one part of her face, because we're going to be adding it together. So you see how it's a little pointed at the bottom? That's going to be part of her face. So you're going chain 1 and cut your yarn. Make sure you leave a long tail. Pull through. And we're going to be making the second half of her face. Alright. You're going to make a slip knot again. And this time you are going to chain 7 again. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Single crochet down the row. But in this part of it, you are going to make another row of single crochet, so that the face will be a bit wider, because the last one that I've made, her face really wasn't to my liking. So most of the end, we were at the end. Now we are going to chain 1, and you are going to go into the same stitch, that same stitch that you chained 1, go into that stitch and single crochet down the row, all the way down to the end of the row. And even in that last pointy stitch at the bottom, because I think some people forget to go into that stitch there, this one, going to go into that stitch, pull up a loop, single crochet, and it makes it even pointier. And you're going to chain 1, and that is your face. Now what you are going to do with the face, yarn off, pull your yarn, and we're going to attach it. Since she has a bit of a triangular face at the bottom, we're going to add both ends together like that to make her face. Now the face I haven't really fully mastered yet, so I'm going to see if that would look right on her head. Hopefully this would turn out right. I think that should be good. Alright. So that is your face, and what you're going to do is join them together like that. So they'll be joined together to make her face. Maybe I should turn it to the back. Her face is really smooth looking, so I may turn it inside the other side because it looks a bit, I don't like the way the front part looks, but we're going to join that later. And now the last part that we are going to do is make her hair. Now she has hair coming out the back portion of her neck, and she also has a sort of puffy hair thing going on at the front of her head, and then a bun at the top. And we are going to be making all of those individually and adding them all together. In this part I did glue mine on, but it's much safer and easier to sew yours on, and I'm going to sew mine on for this part. So get your black yarn and your 3.75mm hook, and I'll meet you back to make the hair. Alrighty then, so for the hair that goes down her back, you will need to make a slip knot, and you are still using your 3.75mm hook, and you are going to chain 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So after you chained your 11, you are going to single crochet down this row, and you are going to make 2 more rows of single crochet. So it's going to be 3 rows in all after you've done the single crochet. So single crochet down this row, and I call it the starting row because I don't count the first thing you do to the slip knot or magic circle as row 1. I just don't do that for some reason. But this is the starting row, and after the starting row you will make 2 more rows of single crochet. So in all it will be 3 rows. So after you have finished with that, I will come back and show you how to make her puffed hair part of her hair. And also for this, make sure you go into the same stitch as you chained 1. So let me just show you what I mean. After you have chained 1, go into the same stitch again and do a single crochet. After you are done, this is what it's going to look like, a simple row of 3 rows of single crochet. And after that, you are going to chain 1, cut off your yarn, leave a long tail, and for this part, next part, we are going to be making the puffed portion of the top part of her hair. Okay, now for the puffed hair portion of her hair, I don't really know what it's called, but make a slip knot, and you're going to chain 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And you are simply going to do a double crochet in every stitch across for row 1. That was a half double crochet. Let's get it together. I'm going to do a double crochet down the row, and you are going to continue for rows 1 through 3. Now if it's not big enough, because the puffed hair is going to be curled like this on the back of her head, it needs to be puffed up. So if and it also frames her face. So if the rows aren't long enough to frame the top portion of her face, then you will need to make more rows. 3 or 4 rows. It all depends on how you want it to look. But I'm going to be making 3 rows, and then I'll come back and see if that is the right amount for my head. But for right now, do 3 rows of double crochet. Alrighty, now this is the last part before we add everything together, and I will have to add the 3 strands, or the OB, if that's how you pronounce it. For the bun, you are going to make a magic circle. We haven't done a lot of magic circles in this pattern. Again, with your 3.75mm hook, you are going to chain 1. There you go. Let's move this back. I don't know why it's so close. And you are going to put, a single crochet, 7 single crochets into the magic circle. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, come on, and 7. Now you're going to pull that closed. Now you have this cute little thing. You're going to slip stitch into the top of the stitch. There you go. Now make sure that you're going into the right stitches because it's harder to see with black yarn. But for the bun portion, all you're going to do is put 1 double crochet in every stitch around for rows 1 and 2, and I will meet you back to join everything together. Alrighty, now when you are done, this is what it's going to look like. You are going to cut your yarn off, long tail, remember. And in this portion, as I've said in all of my tutorials, you can either choose to glue on everything or sew on everything. Now, I usually would take the sewing needle and pull through and take that here. Well, I still can do it, but I find it easier of attaching your sewing needle and pushing it through because it won't shred up the yarn. So, before I join everything together, I'm going to put my 3 strands around my Olby, I think is how it's pronounced. And the 3 strands, or the sash around it, is called the OBGME. I want to make sure that I am accurate with this. So what you were going to do, let me back it up so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, you're going to take both strands, make sure they're even on both ends. Make sure they're even on both ends. And you are going to sit your thing in the middle. You can see you're going to sit it in the middle. And you're going to tie all 3 of the strands. Make sure it's even in the middle of the thing. Excuse me. And you're going to tie it together. Make sure you don't tie it tight because remember it's no stuffing in this. You're going to tie it just a little bit like that. Don't pull it tight. And you're going to retie it again, tighter this time. What you're going to do is don't cut off, leave a little bit of thing, a fraightness like that, to make it look a bit more realistic. And that's all it is. So take your scrap yarn. I always keep every bit of my scrap yarn to use for stuffing if needed. And actually the only thing that you actually need to stuff is your bun that we just made if you want to. So, since I am choosing to glue on some of my things and sew on some of my things, I'm going to sew on my ends and then I will show you how to put everything together. Alrighty, now as you can see, we're going to add both things together. Now what you will need to do is take the longest one or longest stitch that you think would, because it's several things that you can attach your hook to, and attach your needle. Where's my needle? Here it is. So attach your needle. And attach your needle, and what you're going to do is you're just going to simply attach both ends together to make her face. You can't even see it. But what I'm going to do is go into that bottom stitch and go into the bottom stitch on here and just pull through, and you're going to join the sides together so that it becomes one face. Or you could turn it this way if you want. It's all up to you. So join your face together and we will start adding everything else. Alright, now this is how the arms are supposed to be attached. You're going to attach your arms to your to your lady. First you will attach the arms, and then you will attach the neck. Now it's a tiny hole in the top part where you can stick it in and crochet through it and around it, or you can just leave it there, but I like to crochet mine or sew mine into that hole. So sew on both of your arms, and the face and the hair are all things that need to be done together, and I need to show you, not just tell you how to do it, but show you how to do it, because you might get confused if you don't know how the lady looks, which you kind of should if you are planning on making this. So add your arms. They should be up like this, almost to her neck, but up like this, and you will attach both arms, and I'll be back so you can add the face and the hair along with it. Alright, this is her body, her arms joined onto the body. Now I will be placing her neck into this. So it's a tiny hole still there. So what I'm going to do is just push it in like that. You can either sew it in or push it in, but if you don't sew it in, it probably won't stay connected. I'm just going to go in and go through and go back out the stitch. Make sure it won't show, just to connect it a bit. Just so it'll stay a bit. Or you can do how I did and leave the strand of yarn that's connected to the neck and just pull it through a bit, and that should help connect it a bit more. Let me go back in here and sew through, well, you can't see, sew through everything. Remember to make sure you go back into the same stitch so that it won't show the tan yarn through the brown yarn. But that is the neck portion of it, and I'll just push that in with my yarn needle. But what I do, it makes it a lot easier so that you won't have to cut off your yarn and you have a yarn tail that is showing on your thing. I like to pull my, I lost it. I like to pull my things through the entire body, or as much of the body that I can get the needle through, and pull it out on a part that has the same color yarn, so that there are no frayed ends or just tiny little ends that are sticking out, and it all looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the needle through here and down through the body, and I'm going to pull it out through the OB. So you see it's the same color yarn, and you can cut it really close, and see, no more yarn. And I have to do the same thing for this one. So after you do that, we are going to attach the hair onto the neck and the face. Alrighty, so I've gotten my glue gun hot here, and I'm going to start with my, oh no, wait. You also need to add the eyes. The eyes are only 2 slits for this portion. So before I add the face, I have to add the eyes. I forgot about it. You will need your needle again. Where's my needle? Make sure not to burn myself. Take your yarn needle with your black yarn Give me your stitching needle. Pull that through. I just tie mine. And you're going to take your face. Never been actually fully satisfied with how the face looks, but you're going to go in from the back, and however big you want your eyes to be. Her eyes are pretty far apart on her face, and you just go in and go back out the other way. Come on. And that's one eye. Make sure you leave a tiny bit of strands to tie it. Let's rip this off. Come on. Come on. I'm gonna rip this off. It'll come off. I can smell my glue gun. I can smell the glue, so it's getting really hot. Gotta hurry up. Okay. So that's one eye. You're gonna do the same for the other eye, or a slit in this case, because I tried to make the eyes a proper way, but just didn't come out that great to me. So I think this will look a lot better than what I had originally had planned. So just go in and go back out in the same direction. I'm going to make sure they line up properly. Let's see if it looks right. I guess that works. You're going to cut this off, and you are going to tie, let's pull it back. You're going to tie this, but don't tie it tightly when you get to the end. Tie it really loosely, and the second knot, tie it really tightly so that it won't come undone. Let's make sure this is even. And then for the next one, you do the same exact thing. And now we are going to, after you do that and you feel like it's tied securely, you can cut the remaining yarn off if you want to. I'm going to, because I don't think it's going to come undone with how tight I pulled it. So, there are the eyes. Now, I'm going to cut this off. Like that. There we go. That's your face there. And I'm going to get the body and the neck. A bit of her neck is showing in the picture, so I'm going to leave a bit of her neck out and put the rest of the face on the bottom part. So for my glue, I'm going to glue the bottom portion of this. Yeah, it's bubbly. You can see it was getting hot. The bottom portion of this, get all the strands off, and be careful. And I'm going to place that on the very end, like that. I'm going to let that sit for a bit. And that's how it looks so far. Now the hair, the top portion of the bob is supposed to sit like that around her head and push up at the back like this. And if you pull it out, it's like a tiny little puff sort of thing. And then her hair goes in the back of it like that, and then her bun goes on top. Now I'm going to glue mine on, and if you're gluing this on, it has to go around the head, so don't use too much glue for it. And it has to sit on the head a bit, has to shape it like that. Make sure that shapes it. Let it sit there for a second. Then you're gonna have to curl it up and push it in a bit. And that should come to the back of the neck that you made. And you'll have to glue that too. But I want to make sure that this glue stays down. You will glue the tiny strand here to the nape of the neck here, like that. This is how she's going to look after a while. She looks kind of creepy. But, okay. And then you're just going to sit the bun on top of her head like that. Glue it if you want to, which I am going to because it's a lot easier. And you take your glue and just sit it on the top of her head like a cherry on top. And you are done. Okay, so this is the final result for the lady from Little Nightmares. And I think this is the last creature or enemy that I will be making for that game. I may try to make the janitor, but I thank you for visiting my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye.